Right, we're going to wait for just a couple more minutes before we start, and we're aiming to finish the session at 5 to 11. Okay, well, I'm going to work on the premise that as soon as we start talking, more people are going to show up. Hello and welcome to this session on AI for blind users. My name is Simone. I'm a senior lecturer in the Centre for HCI Design at City University of London. And we're going to have two talks today, one by Lida Theodoro on the Orbit project and one by Beatrice Petensi on her PhD work on sighted guiding. Before we start, this is going out on YouTube. It's live streaming, and we're also going to record it. I don't know if and there it is. So the way we're going to run this is we have the talks, and then we're going to have some questions. Please, it would be really helpful if you put some questions in the chat as well. Without further ado, I'm going to disappear and hand over to Lida.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you all hear me? You can hear me, yes, okay. I'm gonna share my screen. And I hope you can see my screen. Okay, good. So, one second. Okay, all right. So hi everyone, I am Lida. I'm a research fellow at City University of London. I work in the Centre of Human-Computer Interaction Design, and today I'm going to talk about the Orbit project, which is a project focused on personalized object recognition aimed at blind and low vision people. So the project is funded by the Microsoft AI for Accessibility program, and the project team includes researchers from City University of London, Microsoft Research, and Oxford University. So I'm going to start by giving you a bit of context. So we know that smartphones are really useful in making visual information accessible to blind people. And for instance, there is an app called Seeing AI that is used from many blind users. And this app allows you to take a picture of your surroundings, and then it reads aloud the things that are in the picture. For example, in the slide, you can see that there is a picture of a mug, and the app announced that as a close-up of a coffee cup. So the problem with this kind of application is that they cannot tell you which of the things they recognize are yours. So they might tell you that this is a mug, but they won't tell you that this is your mug. And the reason for that is that they don't know what things are particularly important to users who are blind or have low vision. And this is because all the existing data sets are collected from sighted users. So that means that if a blind person loses, for example, his white cane, or the white cane gets mixed up with someone else's cane, then the app won't be able to recognize it, because the existing datasets do not include any images of white canes. And to talk a bit more about these datasets, at the moment, the datasets available for personal object recognition are very small. So they contain data from around 10 users, and maybe they contain hundreds of images. And there has been no effort to collect images of objects that may be important to users who are blind or have low vision. So with the Orbit project, we want to create a large data set of labeled videos of objects collected from blind and low vision people. The dataset will be public and available to be used from researchers, developers, or organizations to build better AI systems, to implement new algorithms in existing apps, or even to help create novel wearable systems. And to do that, we built the Orbit Camera app, which helps blind users to take videos. And I will talk about this a bit more later in the presentation. So in order to collect this large dataset, we had to develop a procedure and also develop an iPhone app for the data collection. And for this, we started by doing a pilot study with 8 participants, which followed by a phase 1 data collection study, which is where we are at the moment. And in the phase 1 data collection, we are aiming for data collected for up to 100 users. And finally, we will eventually do the phase 2 data collection, where we are aiming for 1,000 users. So I'm going to start by talking about the pilot study. So the main aim of the pilot was to identify what personal objects are important to blind and low vision people, along with a specific context that the objects exist in, and also explore how blind users use their phone to take videos of this object. And finally, to create the first small data set that can be tested for machine learning. So for the pilot study, we were looking for participants that were registered blind, that they were above 18 years old, that they speak English, they have an iPhone, and they live in the UK. So what we did in the pilot was that we visited 8 participants at their houses. We started by a short interview about what items they would like an object recognizer to find. So this was an open-ended dialogue. And so we discussed what items are important in their everyday life. And at the end, we asked them to select 5 items that they wanted to take short videos of. We asked them to take these short videos using their camera app of their iPhone. And at the end, we asked them to name each object, so to give a label to each object they selected. Oops. So since we wanted to create a dataset for machine learning, we had to keep in mind that the dataset should include 2 different types of videos. So we have the training videos and the testing videos. The training videos are the ones that the machine model learns how the object looks like. And then we have the testing video where the model tests if the object can be recognized in a real life scenario. So during the pilot study, we asked participants to select 5 items and take 5 videos for each item. So we have in total 25 videos from each participant. And for each item, we asked the participants to take training videos using 2 different video techniques and testing videos in 3 different settings in their houses. So regarding the video techniques, because it was a pilot study, we didn't want to give very specific instructions about how to take the videos, but we gave them, briefly, we gave them some techniques to follow. So we had the rotate technique and the zoom technique. So for the rotate technique, we asked them to just rotate the object to film it from different angles. And then for the zoom technique, we asked them to start close to the object and then slowly pull the camera away from it. And this was for the training videos. Then for the testing videos, we didn't give them any instructions, so we told them to film the object in their own way. So we did some qualitative analysis of the video data from the pilot. In total, we collected 193 videos from 8 participants. And as you can see, participants selected some similar objects, where the white cane, the keys, glasses, the bag were some of the most famous ones. So we found some differences in how easy it was for the participants to film the object depending on their size. So smaller objects were easier to film than medium one. And this was something that we used in the instructions for the phase 1 data collection. This was helpful because it helped us develop different filming techniques depending on the size of the object. Another thing that we noticed during the pilot was that participants were using different techniques to film the object from different angles. So some participants were rotating the object with one hand while filming, while other ones were just placing the object on a surface, and they were walking around it while filming it. So one participant, as you can see in the image, placed his backpack on a table, and he was filming it while he was walking around it. And this happened, the second one happened more for bigger objects, where it was harder to rotate them. And again, this was something we took into account when we developed the instructions on how to film the objects. So another thing was that when we asked participants to take the testing videos and we didn't give them any instructions, we noticed that some participants were filming the object as if they were using a recognition app. So they were scanning the room to find the object. They were starting from the left to the right, like scanning until the object was in frame. And in most cases, we noticed that they were moving the camera until the object was in frame and then keeping the camera still for a few seconds, or even they were zooming in to get closer to the object. And this was important because it was not good for our machine learning data, because it wasn't realistic at all. So again, this was something we had to avoid for the phase 1 data collection. So we made sure that we explained this clearly in the instructions we gave to them for the phase 1. So we did some initial investigation on the pilot data for machine learning. So we tried 2 different models. The first model was a convolutional neural network where it was selecting 50 random frames from each video. And this model gave us 47.7 accuracy, where the second model had a frame picking mechanism that automatically was learning to identify which frames in the videos were more useful and informative. And it was selecting those, ignoring all the others. And this gave us 59.1% accuracy. So these were kind of promising results. And we believe that with more data that we're collecting in the next phases, we can get better results. So overall, the pilot helped us refine the video techniques we used for the phase 1 data collection and to develop some detailed instructions for these techniques, and also define some video validation criteria we use in the phase 1 data collection. So for all this, we worked in close collaboration with the machine learning members of our team. So in the proper study, we can get a good data set appropriate for machine learning. Also from the pilot, we got some feedback on how to make a more simplified version of a camera app for blind and low vision users. So phase 1 data collection. So this is where we are at the moment. And as I mentioned earlier, the objective of this study is to collect a data set of 8,000 labeled videos of objects. And the dataset will then be tested for machine learning to make sure it's useful to develop and evaluate models for personalized object recognition. So based on the feedback we got from the pilot, we developed the Orbit camera app. That is an easy-used camera app to help blind users to film their objects. And we also developed detailed user instructions to explain to users how to film the objects they select. So we asked participants to film 10 objects that are meaningful to them and take 8 videos of each object, 6 training and 2 testing. So this is how the Orbit camera app looks like. The application is accessible for blind users and it works very well with VoiceOver. The app has 2 main screens. The first screen is a list of the things participants have chosen to video. And if you want to film one thing, I think you have to first give it a name and press go, and then you will be in the second screen, which is called the thing record and review screen. And this is where you can record videos of that thing. So if you then click on one of your things from the list, this will take you to the third picture, where you can see the process of your video, if it's been uploaded to the server, or if it has been checked, and you can also review or delete your video. So the user instructions contain a lot of information about the study. They explain to participants how to use the app, and most importantly, they explain to them how many videos they should take and how this video should look like. So as mentioned in the beginning, for machine learning purposes, we ask participants to take 2 different types of videos, training and testing videos. So for the training videos, we ask them to take 6 of them in 6 different settings with different backgrounds. And we also ask them to record one thing at a time and show that thing from different sides, from different angles. So for the testing videos, we had to make sure that they look as realistic as possible. So we asked participants to film the object on a surface they commonly look for it. And also we asked them to create a realistic scene by placing other objects around the object they wanted to film. So after participants submitting their videos on the server, we validate each video to check that first all of them, they don't show any personal identifiable information. This can be name, addresses, phone numbers, pictures, faces of people. But we also check that the videos show the object, so that the videos include the objects and that both videos and labels are appropriate to be shared with the public. If any of this is not true, then we ask participants to retake the videos. And we are still looking for participants at the moment. So these are the criteria. We want participants to have to participate in the study. So they have to be registered blind, they have to be above 18 years old, speak English, have an iPhone so they can download and use the camera app, and also they have to live in the UK. And more details and the full advertisement of the study, you can find it in our website. So yeah, if you know anyone, you please share this with them. And yes, so the next steps of the project include the phase 2 data collection, where we are aiming for 1,000 participants from all around the world. And this will create a large data set of more than 10,000 videos, hopefully of labeled objects. And we will run machine learning experiments on both data sets, and of course we will then release the open data set. Parallel to the data collection and analysis phases, we are developing an AI curriculum for accessibility that will be aimed for blind and low visual people that are over 16 years old. We're still in early stages discussing this, but we're aiming to follow a level up approach so the curriculum can be followed from people with different skills and abilities. And for this, we are working in close collaboration with the Royal National College for the Blind in Hereford. That was it. Thank you very much for listening, and please feel free to ask me any questions.
Great. Thank you, Lida, for that. I want to give you a virtual round of applause for that. And we have a couple of minutes, I think, for questions. So I think there was a question from Elizabeth, Jester's a familiar name. And she asked, did the rotation technique of object versus camera have an effect on the data? So I think that that's something that you mentioned in the pilot study.
So yeah, if it had an effect on the data, I think they were both good enough. So I think participants were smart enough to decide if the object was bigger, so they realized they couldn't rotate it, so they were walking around and filming it, so the object was in frame, and if they could rotate it with their hands, so yeah, they were holding the camera stable and rotating it and filming at the same time. So I think it didn't have an effect on the data, but it was really important to find out this during the pilot, because then for the proper study, where we developed specific filming techniques depending on the size of the object. For example, for bigger objects, that we know that they cannot rotate that object, we ask them to identify specific place. Like if they want to film, for example, their door, we ask them to identify some things that they are important on the door, for example, the handle, and then film that specific thing and then film something else. So, and for small items, we keep the rotation. So we ask them to hold the item, place the hand next to the item, rotate, film, and then rotate again and film. So yeah, so I think it didn't have an effect on the data, but it was important to find out because we used that for the instructions for the phase 1 data collection.
That's great. And we have another question from Elizabeth as well. And I don't know if you can answer that. If not, I can pitch in, Lida. So she asked, how possible or likely would it be to differentiate between similar objects like two canes in the same frame?
Ooh.
Shall I answer that, Lida?
So
the thing is that that's exactly what we're trying to find out. The machine learning, so the data set is to be used for personalized object recognition. We just have to make sure that the accuracy is high enough. At the moment, we're trying to find good approaches for that. I think, currently our accuracy with something we tried on the pilot data set is about 60%, which obviously isn't high enough to distinguish between perhaps two canes. But we're hoping that the phase 1 data set will be good enough to allow us to develop algorithms that can actually distinguish between two white canes, for example. Okay, I think we can perhaps take one quick question, and perhaps the one from John Rooksby. What potential for biases are there in the data sets, and maybe in terms of participant diversity, and then we can move on to.
So obviously we have participants that they have different level of vision, and we record that. So we have a background survey that we send to them in the beginning, so we can track the different level of vision they have, and we will use that. We will publish this data, so we will use that. And what else was in the question?
It was sort of like talking about participant diversity, but I think you sort of covered that in terms of.
Yeah, I think most of it is like the different level of vision participants have. So also the app and the instructions. So we want participants that they are blind but also have low vision. So we are open to any blind users, participants. Yeah.
Okay. Great. I think what we'll do is we answer some of the questions within the chat, and then we'll now switch over to Beatrice in the interest of time. So if we can have a little swap over, and a final thank you to Lida for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will share the screen.
Great. Go ahead, Beatrice.
Okay. Should be fine, right? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Beatrice. I'm a second-year PhD student at the HCI Center at City University of London. And today I'm going to talk about a research study that I conducted during my first year as part of my PhD research on AI for extended the sighted guide navigation. I will start with some motivation research question. After that, I will present the work that I've done. And finally, I will discuss some implication for design, AI-assisted technology, and my future work plan. My research is focused on the sighted guide technique. This is a well-known technique used by people with visual impairments to navigate in their daily life. And in this particular configuration, pairs of people are working together. Specifically, the guide bend the arm parallel to the ground and work one step ahead and side by side to the companion to guarantee safety. I'm particularly interested in this particular technique because it represents a clear example of people working together to accomplish navigation. And this research is indeed aiming to investigate alternative AI opportunities to design assisted technology. After that, this research in particular draws from the interdependence frame, which stress the importance of and the work done by people with disabilities in collaboration with others and with technology and also with the environment. If you think about it, a traditional way to deploy AI technology in navigation would be to provide, for example, in this case, a replacement of the guide's rule. So providing a set of instruction to navigate the physical environment. But instead, in this research, I would like to explore navigation as an interdependent activity and investigate how differently AI technology can support this interdependent relationship. To answer this main research question, I was interested to understand in details how people work together to navigate the environment and how this interdependence is achieved in action during the sighted guide navigation, and when also people experience some kind of breakdowns of this interdependence. To answer these research questions, I conducted a qualitative research study with pairs of participants composed of a person with visual impairment and a sighted guide. I asked them to take familiar journeys in their daily basis and video record them using the sighted guide technique and wearing 2 bodies cameras. I recruited in total 4 pairs of participants, and I have collected around 4 hours of video data, which I analyzed through interaction analysis. I will present now some findings. To do so, I will show you 2 video clips of collected video data. In the first clip, we will focus on multimodal resources such as talk, body movement, and gesture used by participants to navigate through the space. Further, how these resources are deployed to create to co-create a common space and a shared space to navigate in and through it. And also we will highlight the importance of timing and of co-creation of this common space. And finally, how interdependence is achieved through this unfolding of interactions. I'm not sure I shared the audio. Let me try if you can hear it.
She might not.
Okay, great. Just a brief introduction. So in the first video clip, we have George and Sarah. They have been married for 20 years. Sarah is the guide and George is partially sighted. In this video segment, the pair is going out to the supermarket and they are approaching a narrow gap on the right. I would like you to pay special attention to the sequence of Sarah's actions while they are approaching this narrow gap, and also what happened while they are getting through it. So I will show you the video clip and then we'll discuss briefly about it.
She might not. She was talking about it before she went away. Right. Because, like, go skinny. She was talking about it before she went away because
okay.
She might not.
Okay, at the beginning of the clip, we have seen a change of orientation from a general conversation that Sarah was holding to, let's say, a more navigational perspective. So Sarah indeed first used talk to emphasize a change in topic. Indeed, she prolongs the word because, and then she makes a pause in the ongoing conversation. After that, she still used talk to provide some kind of navigational clue. And indeed, she say, go skinny. And this to indicate to George how they have to reconfigure themselves from now on to get through this particular challenging moment represented by this narrow gap. So as you can notice, she does not provide any explicit information about the physical environment. So she doesn't say anything about that there is an obstacle nearby or there is a narrow gap ahead, but instead she say go skinny to give some indication to how they have to reorient their bodies. So it's also very interesting what happened next. Indeed, Sarah moves her arm toward the back, and thanks to this gesture, the body's reorientation occurs. Indeed, George moves behind Sarah, and only at this point they are getting through the narrow gap, and they are approaching it in silence. So there is a very long pause in talk, and this pause we can see this pause can help them to pay special attention to this challenging navigational transition. And so to sum up, here we have seen how multimodal resources such as forms of talks, body movement, but also gestures are used to navigate through the space, but also to constitute a common space of interactions where indeed participants are aware of each other's. Further, we also see the importance of timing and synchronization in this unfolding sequence of action. Indeed, when Sarah does an action, for example, she moves her arm behind, there is a response by George, highlighting this continuous negotiation and also highlighting that this unfolding sequence of interactions represent itself an example of interdependence. In the second video clip, instead, we are gonna discuss about different ideas of common space and how these ideas are negotiated within the pair. So that sometimes there is an this common idea of space that doesn't match from one person to the other one, and how this idea of common of mismatch of common space can represent some breakdowns or ruptures. And finally, how resources are deployed also to repair and reestablish this common space of navigation. So in the second video clip, we will still have George and Sarah, but this time they are at the checkout for buying a pair of socks. At the beginning of the clip, we will see that there is it's clear that the pair is attending the same shared space. But I would like to invite you to pay attention to what happens when Sarah decides to leave George, and how George responds to this action, and also how Sarah reestablished contact with George. So as before, I will show you this clip and then I will discuss about it.
These are £4. Do you want to get those, actually?
Yeah, probably they'll be all right.
These are quite nice.
There's only one white one, but...
Let's put this back.
Yeah, they're all right. Do you think wearing non-white
You can
ones
get
are
two
okay?
for £6 if you want.
No?
You can get two for £6.
Do I need to?
So at the beginning of, as I said, at the beginning of the clip, the couple is attending the same common space thanks to the pack of socks that they are holding, even though in this case they are not in physical contact. But after that, at a certain point, Sarah decides to go away, and she announced that with a low voice tone. And this emphasizes a transition from a common space to a more personal space of action, at least for her. But at the same time, it's very not clear if this transition is equally perceived by George as well. indeed, we can notice that he maintains the same conversation with the same voice tone. And also, he doesn't change orientation from his previous position, and yeah, neither orientation nor position. So he remains as he was before. And only at this point, Sarah decided to come back and to repair and reestablish a common space. So she's doing that, raising the voice pitch and moving closer to George. So in conclusion, findings reveal how multimodal resources that we have seen we identify as talk, body movements, and gesture are used to constitute this common space to navigate in and through it. How these work together and this unfolding of sequence of interaction represent an example of interdependence. And finally, how these, again, these unfolding relations are sometimes subject to breakdowns, and also they are open to some kind of repair. Findings also suggest important implications for design AI assisted technology to support the social interaction in sighted guiding. Specifically, AI interventions can be oriented to help these breakdown moments, and also to support the reconfiguration of space when repair occurs. In the study, we have observed different examples of raptors in moments where when people lose physical contact with one another. And in this case, there is sometimes, I mean, there is not sometimes, but there is a shift from a shared space to a more individual managed spaces. So, and we have also seen that how participants repair to these situations. And for example, participants deployed changes in pitch and moving closer to one another, or also stop suddenly the walk as a way to repair this indeed the breakdowns moment. This suggests, for example, that we may use sound to, and how we can use sound to indicate changes in relative position to one another when a participant loses physical contact. Given this, my future work will focus on letting go situations. So this moment where companions lose contact with one another. And during this situation, I'm interested in exploring ways to track the relative location and distance between a user and a guide. Specifically, I will start this second phase investigating how movements and gesture are deployed during this transition, and exploring also how computer vision, machine learning algorithms, and other technologies such as beacon, Bluetooth can be combined and used to approximate location, distance, and orientation from one another. Finding of this stage will drive the implementation and the evaluation of any AI assistive technology prototype to use in real world settings, so in during sighted guiding. Yes, so thanks for listening. I'm available for any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Beatrice. Again, a virtual round of applause to you. And we actually have quite a bit of time for questions. We have, according to my watch, about 8 minutes. So perhaps we can spend a few minutes questions for Beatrice, if there are any. And then perhaps we can also open it out a little bit, because I know Alex had a question that might be quite interesting to discuss with more people. So do we have any questions for Beatrice? You might have to raise your hands and I might. Okay. All right. We have a question from Alex, that there have been a lot of projects aiming to support navigation. And how does your work compare and contrast with this existing work?
So I said briefly at the beginning about this, but yes. So basically there are, yes, a lot of questions to support navigation, to support blind navigation, but all this work see navigation as an instrumental problem and individual activity, and they try to indeed technology try to describe the physical environment and giving, providing information about how to reach a destination. So giving turn-by-turn instructions and identifying and try to avoid obstacle on the way. Instead, I'm considering navigation under like a slightly different perspective. So as I said, my work draws from this interdependence frame and the interdependence concept that focus on the work done by people in collaboration with others. So I'm trying to support the social interaction between people during navigation instead of just see navigation as an individual activity.
Thank you, Beatrice. I muted myself and then forgot to unmute myself. Are there any more questions for Beatrice? Oops. In which case, Alex, you had a question that you wanted to post. We have about 5 minutes left. Do you want to kind of pose that more generally?
Yeah, I can take a shot. I think, as Simone said in the chat, this is something that we've been talking about quite a bit as a group of people who are working on AI and vision systems for the blind and sight impaired. And that is this potential kind of tension between using computer vision and vision-based systems to somehow extend or enable the abilities of those who are blind and vision impaired. And I'm still not sure how I feel about that, but obviously we're starting to think about the potential trouble of casting a sighted world into a world where sight obviously isn't the dominant sensory modality. And I don't know how we square those things, and if there's a way to think about computer vision that doesn't privilege sight as a sensory modality. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
I had a few, because the cynic in me was a bit like, how accurate was the data set when it was just like if things aren't in frame? And I went to there's a restaurant where puts you in complete darkness, so you can't see anything. And then like my food was like hitting my face here, so I'm like, there is a struggle. But there are a lot of blind photographers, so maybe look at the different techniques and what they recommend and how they see the world as well. So there's books on that. I haven't read into that, but I'm into photography, so that's the only reason that I know. So that, yeah, Cynic and me was like that as well, but there are techniques on how they do that. Yeah, and maybe that would help for photography as well, being able to identify what you're taking a picture of. Because there was an advert of like a guy taking, like, he was like a professional photographer for a car company. I was like, what? It was incredible.
Yeah, there's a, I think Microsoft in the US have worked on a tool that supports blind people's use of sharing pictures on Facebook. So it's not that blind people don't use visual media. It's that the way in which they, I mean, I'm very cautious. Talking about blind people as a population, of course, immediately we get into some trouble here. But I think I'm worried that we might be privileging sight over other things. And I think there may be cases in which visual media might be used not for the purposes of seeing a photo, but for something else. So on Facebook, for example, it's about potentially sharing an experience rather than showing the vision. So, why should we be looking at computer vision as the kind of answer to these challenges?
I think the sort of discussions that we're having quite often is why limit ourselves to vision, right? Because it sort of privileges sighted interaction, because our visual sense is so dominant if you're sighted. Why not give people other senses that even sighted people don't have? So my personal thing is let's make people superhuman, right? Because if you're kind of going, well, people who are blind don't have sight, so let's give them sight. You could say, well, they don't have sight, so let's give them infrared vision, right? that sighted people actually don't have, and that might be much more powerful. So I'm kind of thinking about not limiting the modalities, but actually just blowing modalities wide open and giving people other modalities that they might not previously have had. So I think that is sort of my take on that. That we mustn't just stop giving blind people vision. We should give them other modalities as well.
Leader Beatrice, do you have any thoughts on that, Liz?
I mean, one thing I want to say, which goes back to the curriculum that I mentioned at the end of the presentation and we're working on at the moment, is that, yes, what the discussions we have done until now is that we want to try to explain the AI concepts to blind users, giving them finding playful ways to explain these things, maybe through haptics or through audio or through 3D printing. So yeah, so this is something that we are working on at the moment, and it goes together with what Simone mentioned earlier. Yeah, so that's
yeah, in my work I started to explore if computer vision can be helpful to kind of detect or approximate distance from a user and a guide, but it's having this particular configuration and where they are very close, people are very close to each other, and they are in physical contact. So also there is also a problem about how you can capture the right information to try to predict some kind of distance. But indeed, I've seen that common machine learning algorithms that are using in computer vision are not working in this configuration, because indeed it's very hard to find the right setup of the camera, and most of the time you don't capture the right information.
I'm just watching the time a little bit, because as it always happens, the best kind of conversations happen right at the end when you have to leave. So I hope we have covered most of the questions. I know there's some bits popping up on the chat about haptics and the uses of the data sets and how that played out. Hopefully we have covered all of that. If there's any sort of other discussions that we wanted to have outside of that, please feel free to contact Alex, myself, Beatrice, or Lida, and we can carry on that conversation offline. I'm afraid that we have to hand over to the next session. So I'm going to leave this, well, I'm going to end the meeting for all in the next second or so. So thank you very much for attending.
Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Okay.
How you doing, Alex?